Alright, you are at the last one of the videos for this class. um, Congratulations for making it this far. You've been doing great so far. I've been looking at grades. They've been looking wonderful. Just keep it up. Just finish strong here, okay? So we're going to be going through the last video, and we're going to talk about Michelangelo and Donatello. We're going to start with Michelangelo. Donatello only has one image that I'm focusing with on this course. There's many others to choose from too, but again, like I said, I'm just spoon feeding you just a little bit of this course. So if you do like this section and you would like to get involved into a class that has more about this section, art history, they focus a full-on 16-week course on the Renaissance. And if you like it, I highly recommend you take it. Just be aware, there's a lot more artists and there's a lot more detail because you're covering 400 years. So, on that note, let's get right into Michelangelo. Alright. So, for Michelangelo, what makes him the greatest artist in my opinion? Well, there's first of all, you got to understand, again, he's part of that Renaissance idealist style. So he started at a very young age. And his career basically from the get-go has been a building and a momentum of his creation, of what he was going to be doing for the rest of his life. Like I said, you know, when you think about the Renaissance and these artists that are part of the Renaissance, they were trained as children to be these great masters that we recognize today. They didn't start in their 20s and 30s like some college students that I see, and they decide that they want to go into art. No, they're trained at a very young age. Will we ever see another Michelangelo? Sure, possibly, but the chances are it's one of those, it's a rarity. This man really did an insane amount of work, and the way he worked, it's just crazy how much energy he put into every art piece. He was a master in his own right. Now, there are other sculptors at this time, and I want you to understand that. When you look at the Vatican, okay, there's tons of different sculptures throughout the space. All right. But you can always tell the difference between another sculptor and Michelangelo. There's something different about the way he works, how he works, and it's just like when I talk about Rodin and I talk about the bronze, and when you did the Age of Bronze, everybody was like, this is different. This is a totally different method, and the details that are involved. Same thing goes in Michelangelo's. The amount of detail this man puts into a piece of stone is breathtaking. Now, we're going to be talking, we also talked about in the last lesson, we also talked about Raphael. And Raphael will be a little bit of a foreshadowing in this if you're watching this before Raphael's video. And I'll be comparing the two like I did in Raphael. And I just want to explain why I consider Raphael to be a stronger drawer than Michelangelo, who I consider the greatest. So we'll talk about that as we get through. So let's get into the idea. Now, I'm going to be doing some footnotes as I go through. I'm not telling you the whole story right off the bat on some pieces. Some have kind of conclusions to it. That's part of what makes this kind of a fun lecture. So I'm not giving you the full story, but I'm going to give you a big portion of it. So if you might hear something in another piece and if you're not watching and listening to these videos, you might miss some little tiny details that are important. Okay, so make sure you listen carefully. Now, let's go to the first piece I have for Michelangelo. First off, we've seen this image. Hopefully you've seen it. Hopefully you didn't take this class not knowing anything about art. You can find this replica of an image, I guarantee you, at any Walmart in the United States. Go into the bathroom, bedroom, and kitchen area, and I guarantee something in there has some kind of Michelangelo's hands touch. Posters. I mean, this is a big area, and I've seen this image of two people touching their hands in many different forms and fashions, and you can look it up on Amazon. It's kind of funny what people will put on an object for imagery. Now, this is just a small portion of a large piece, and then the piece I'm about to show you is even larger than what I'm about to show. Okay, and so when you look at this, know that there's more to this than just two hands. What are they connected to? Well, if you've never seen the piece, here it is. It's the creation of Adam. Okay, now in the creation of Adam, we have Adam on the left and God on the right. All right. Now, Adam's body, okay, is a magnificent specimen. I mean, it's perfectly done. Now, I know what you're going to say if you're looking down in the nether regions of his manhood there. The reason it is so small, it's because the Pope at this time wanted him to put a grape leaf over his genitalia, and Michelangelo's response is they have no consciousness of being nude, so if they were covered, then they would have consciousness of their nudity. And so he had a good point. So the priest said, just make it inaccurate. Make it like an infant, is what he said. And a lot of sculptors did this, so this is not unusual for this time. And so he agreed to it. But everything else about the human form is perfectly fine. Now, I want you to notice he's clothed, all right, but he's not unbearing any chest. I mean, he does have great arms, and the wind and the flow of his body, you can see it. The outfit he's wearing is closely connected to his body, and so that some people might say it has a romantic kind of a feel. If it's going off with the Romanticism group, well, the Renaissance kind of plays with that, with a little bit of the beauty of the body at this point, but it's not like the Romantic period, the Romanticism group, where if this was, his chest would be a little bit more bare, and it would be more of a seductive pose. So it's a little different than the Renaissance, but at the same time, it's still concealing, okay, versus Adam at this point. And a lot of people, students have asked me, well, why isn't he nude? Why isn't God nude? Is he ashamed to be nude? And I honestly think that Michelangelo covered God because people would probably have an issue with the human form of God being naked, and so that was the main issue of it, I believe. But that, again, like I said, this is just stereotypical ideals behind what man thinks. And art historians think. Also, some people might even, and I think I saw this in a movie too, even speculate that the shape that God is in, when you look at the Vatican close up and you look at that shape that's connected, it has a very much a brain-like shape. And so it's talking about the creation of the man and the brain and human thought. So that red kind of flowing cloth around God and the angels have this very man-like, brain-like shape. And so some people, like I said, people take these paintings and they speculate and they contemplate on them and they break them down to the littlest things. But maybe Michelangelo had that in mind as well. I forgot which movie I might have saw that in. I want to say it was kind of in a superhero movie, and I was kind of like, that's interesting thought. And then I did a lot of research on that after looking at it. Oh, look, there's a lot of conspiracists on that. So again, you never know what you might find in a movie that you might not have ever seen, and then you see something a little different in a different light. Now, what is going on with this? Well, in the Bible, if you're non-religious, God touches, or you might not be Catholicism or Catholic or Jewish. If you're Hindu or Buddhist, you might not know. In the story of creation, is God touches Adam with his finger and breathes life into Adam. And the next foreshadowing moment in the book, it talks about that he takes a rib from Adam and puts it into Eve, okay, and then creates Eve, a companion for Adam. Now, here's that moment when Adam's being created, at that one special moment where they're about to touch and he's going to be connected and united with God. Now, they're also in Eden, which is a garden where everything is perfect. All right. Now, if you look, though, in the far right corner in the foreground, behind God, there is a feminine looking angel, and we believe that that is a foreshadowing of Eve. She is not quite woman yet. She has no chest, but she does have feminine features of the face, and so we believe that that is Eve, and she's looking at man being created for the first time. So it's kind of a foreshadowing moment in this piece, and that's why this is a really kind of important piece in the Vatican, or actually in the Sistine Chapel. Okay, speaking of the Sistine Chapel, let's get right to that. The Sistine Chapel. Now, like I said, if you remember the first video, it's Sistine Chapel, not the 16th Chapel. You write down the 16th Chapel, I will deduct a point on your finals and quiz, because it's important that you know that there was not 15 chapels before this. There was not the 15th, the 14th chapel. No, it's the Sistine Chapel. Justin Bieber had an interview with David Letterman, and David Letterman lit him up comically the whole way through the interview, because he said, "Oh, I went to the 16th Chapel," and Letterman's response was, "Oh, did you see the 15th Chapel?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I might even see if I can find that video and put that down at the bottom, so you can see how he got lit up. Now, that's telling me one thing, that this man, Mr. Beaver, is able to go to do anything he wants to do, but without the right knowledge and he just walked into the space and went, "Wow, this is probably really cool," and got really impressed and really amazed at what he saw, but didn't do any literature or any research behind it, and he has all the opportunity to do so. And I think he probably just went through it because people tell you, "Hey, you should go, when you're in Rome, go see the Sistine Chapel, go look at the Vatican." And those are those kinds of moments where you're kind of thinking, he didn't get the full experience, and maybe if he had gotten it, it might have been more impressive. Maybe he would have remembered the name, okay, of the chapel. So I just really want you to have the same ignorance and response. So I'm gonna put that down at the bottom. I'm not picking on Justin Bieber, but that's just me. Okay, he's a good singer in his own right. So, on that, now we're going to be talking, there's the way that the Sistine Chapel is broken down. I want you to write this down if you got your pen ready. The ceiling is all the Old Testament. So everything that's basically in the Old Testament is before Jesus Christ, okay? And so Old Testament's at the top. And then you look at the walls. Now, where there's windows, okay, that's called the... I can't think of the name of those spaces in between, but in between the spaces where there's windows, there's popes, okay, that have reigned at that point, all right, going all the way around from the 14th century to the beginning, okay, and so they're all kind of placed around the chapel, all right, in the window seals, okay. Then you get down to there's like a banister, okay, of information on the wall. Now, everything you see there is the New Testament, and this is dealing with Jesus Christ, okay, in the New Testament. So Jesus is born to Jesus' resurrection, Okay, and in the back of the wall behind the altar, okay, the nave is what it's called. You look at the back of the altar, and you see what we call Last Judgment, and I'll be showing you images of this. Now, the Last Judgment is the last book, okay, the book of Exodus, okay, or Revelation, the Exodus, I believe, yeah, and it's talking about when God comes from heaven and chooses people to go to heaven or hell by their actions of what they've done on earth. And so here he depicts that in the background. Now, my question to you guys is why did Michelangelo do all this? Well, there's two answers, okay? The first answer I'm not going to give until later on. It makes more sense to do it later. But for the first answer, the reason why, or the first answer I'm giving you, the reason is this, okay? People that are around at this time are different than the people that are around today, okay? Today, I believe literacy is probably one of its strongest because of such things as inventions as computers, iPhones, and people that are alive today as youth, I believe, read much better than they did back in the 14th century. And so you got to understand, people would go to church in this little chapel, and this is little compared to most of the things that are around there. There's a couple cathedrals that are much larger. But you got to understand, okay, people would come to this place and they would not understand the Bible because they didn't know how to read the Bible, okay? The second part is say if they couldn't read the Bible, well, they'd listen to the person giving the sermon, okay, the priest, okay, at that time, or the Pope, or a cardinal. This is the three hierarchies of the Catholic faith, okay? So either somebody would be given a sermon, and they might not be able to understand the language that is coming out of their mouth. Now, what language are they speaking? Well, they're speaking Latin, all right? So Latin was, for a long time, was the dominant language. And until about the late 60s, early 70s, Pope John Paul II decided to make the scriptures in a language that more people would be able to understand. So it went to English, Spanish, Italian, or anything in it, wherever the church or cathedral is placed in the land, that the local community can understand the words of God. And so, in case for this idea of literacy, so it's still a fairly brand new idea. You know, I know you think 70s. Well, in today's time, I know it's been around for 70 years with the language, but you got to understand the religion. It's been going on for decades and centuries, and so to have it change like this is a big idea and a big wave. Okay, so most people couldn't go. They'd go to this place and they didn't know what the words were coming out of the priest's mouth. They couldn't read. So Michelangelo has painted the whole scripture in one building on all throughout the whole surfaces of the space to basically educate the illiterate. Okay, does that make sense? That's what this is about. That's why it's so important. All right. Now, what happens now currently in this building? Well, to be honest, only two things happen now. When they reign a new pope, this is the area where they are changed and dressed, and then they vote for popes. So if you're Catholic, you probably remember the last two popes we've had just recently. All right. And it is an ordeal, okay? Popes or cardinals enter the space. Only cardinals can choose. They're the ones in red, all right? Cardinals can choose, and cardinals will get together, and they will decide who should be the next pope. And it's usually one of them in that room, Okay, which is kind of tricky because everybody wants to be pope. So they have to kind of figure out who's the best of the best, and then they choose. When they choose, there's two fireplaces in that space, and they will light a fire to indicate that they have chosen a priest. Now, there's two smokestacks. One smokestack stays black, and the other one, when they find it, a pope, they will make white steam smoke come out. And that will allow the public to know that they have found a pope, and the pope will change, be indoctorate into a pope, and then meet the people for the first time within a matter of hours. It's pretty much a huge spectacle. If you've seen the last two, it's pretty amazing. Now, on that note, so those are some of the things that happen. Okay, so understand the ceiling is the Old Testament, the walls are the New Testament, the back of the wall, okay, the nave behind the altar is the last book of Revelations. I want to say, I can never remember, I have to look that up. I always get that mixed up. I am Catholic, I do go to church, so I always get confused. I think it's Revelations, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it's Exodus. It's Revelation. It has to be Revelation. And so that's what the last judgment. So those are the three major important pieces to this. Now, if you go down below, I will have a link to the Vatican. It's their 365-degree view. I'd like you to look at the pieces. Now, I want you also to understand, when you look at all those architectural beams and molding that you see that's white, like when you see around Christ, not Christ, God there, and man, none of that sculptural stuff is there. None of that molding is there. The walls are completely smooth. This is everything that he has added in a visual element of drawing. And if any of you are thinking about taking a drawing class and you take a perspective class, okay, we teach you how to make optical illusions like this come forward and come out. He was one of the greatest at this, all right? Now, I'm going to I just show you some pictures here. I'm going to, when you look through, so watch, look at the video if it helps you beforehand or after I get done talking about the sections of the way it's broken down. So here's another kind of a close-up. This is the back of the wall, all right? And a lot of students have asked me, what are those circles at the bottom? Well, those circles down there are what we call prayer circles, and they're labyrinths, okay? Now, and you basically follow the white line or black line, and I think it's a white line, and as you follow the white line, you make a prayer throughout there, and that's what a lot of the cardinals will do to see if they're making the right decision. On average, it takes about 25 to 30 days to figure out a pope. Now, the fall of man and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Okay. Now, when you look at this, okay, you have two different scenes. Now, if you remember Raphael's Cathedral, we talked about how his woman looked more feminine, okay? Now, look at the feminine woman of Eve. Does she look feminine? Of course not. She's very muscular, all right? So some people believe that the models that Michelangelo had was typically men, okay? Now, when you look at the models that he's looking at, yeah, they're going to be men. So he's going to be trying to add femininity to these men-like shape, and so he's trying to make Eve more feminine. Well, but when you have a model that's very masculine, it's kind of hard to do so, and so he loses some characteristics that are obviously female experiences. Now, the other thing is he was never married, all right? So that's one of the things. You could use your counterpart, your wife, as a model if it helped you to do so for your imagery. But I this is now a speculation on my part and a lot of others, but I believe that he might have been homosexual. So he liked the company of other men, and he never really looked that closely at what women's bodies looked like. And even his sculptures to his drawings, all women have a very masculine look to them. And I do believe it's because it's the way he looks at a woman, and the way he sees a woman. He doesn't see a woman like a man who lusts for women and sees these body parts as more sexual or seductive, and he sees them as more of a shape. And I think he misses that. And when you look at Raphael, he obviously loved women, and he looked at many different women, so he understood the woman's body better than Michelangelo. So that kind of gives me an understanding, at least, why is all of his women very masculine. But a lot of the art historians don't like putting that in history, so they say that they use male models, which might have been also the case as well. But that doesn't explain majority of his sculptures that are made from women, why they look so masculine. And so I can see that for just this part and that answer, but to add that other part, again, this is speculation on my part. It might be totally incorrect, but I do kind of stand behind it. So, and I'm putting it out there on the internet even. Now, the other thing, if you remember in Raphael's version, the apple was missing. Now, if you remember me saying the apple was probably a ruby, okay, that was chiseled out and stolen, all right, and it was missing. So in this, it is a painted-in apple that the serpent is handing Eve for the first time. Now, also notice, again, we're talking about the serpent. In both images, the serpent is a very feminine shape. So again, we do not understand why the serpent is female. Some people speculate that Eve would have only talked to a female counterpart to trust, and maybe some people just had issues with it being a masculine figure. I don't know the full reasoning behind it. Now, so what you want to do is also I want you to show you on this portion right here, on the far right side, I want you to look at the hips of the man, okay? And if you see where I consider like the love handles area of the man, okay? Now, that little divot that goes kind of like inside and out, okay? And we can kind of consider those love handles, right? Now, if you look at the woman, she has the same thing. Now, can women have love handles? Sure. But generally, when you look at the hip of a woman versus the hip of a man, okay, there's a muscle there, all right? And if you like Abercrombie and Fitch or any of those models that have a very where they kind of take that pelvic region of the man, okay, that muscle tone, all right, in their photographs for their jeans or shorts or whatever, okay, that muscle, all right, is dominantly given to men, okay? Now, women, if you would have that same muscle there, all right, when you gave childbirth, that would tear, okay? Now, there's enough muscles that actually tear when you're having child in the middle of childbirth. So God or evolution, it depends on what you believe, when we're created, okay, women don't have that muscle. And you can see in the feminine version over here, it has that little dip in it, okay? And that's telling me that it is based from a male model, all right? If it was not, it'd have a soft curve going all the way down from the kneecap all the way to her rib, and it should be a really soft curve, not a bumpy curve, okay? Because women would not have that muscle, all right? So here, let's get into the next one. All right, the flood. All right, and the reason I show you this, okay, besides Noah's Ark and the flood, but most people know, I wanted to show you at the top right corner. In the 70s, a earthquake happened and went right through the middle of the Vatican. Now, it wasn't a terrible earthquake. It shook the city enough, but one of the things, pieces of parts of the fresco fell off of the wall. And so instead of recreating it, which art historians that master in recreating art could have easily recreated that, but it would not have been done by the hand of Michelangelo. So what they did is they masked it and they hid it and hid the whole idea of it so you wouldn't see it at first glance. And so right here is a perfect example, and I wanted to show that why is that piece missing, okay? And why did it not stay on, and what happened with it? Why couldn't they put it back up? Well, first of all, this space is a couple stories tall, and that's a very thin sheet of plaster. And that's like if you were to drop a dinner plate off of a balcony, what would happen with that? It would shatter into a million pieces, and that's what happened with this. It just shattered into a million pieces, and it was impossible to put back up. And so that's why I just wanted to show you that portion. There are portions of this that are damaged and are missing. So also too, okay, there are 4 Ladies of Liberty, or the Sibyls are what they're called. Now, each one of them are in different locations throughout the walls. They're sometimes placed in the corner or offset from the corner. Now, I wanted you to see this woman because, again, she still has masculine characteristics, which again gives us the idea of masculinity. Now, this one's the Symbol of Knowledge, okay, and she has a big book there. And the other one is the Symbol of Liberty, and she looks kind of like the Statue of Liberty. And then the last one is that it's easy for you guys to see and understand is also the Symbol of Justice, and she's the one you see typically in courts, okay, and the one that she's mostly known with is the one with the blindfold, a sword, and a scale that most people see. And the last one, which is not as common, is the Symbol of Health, okay, and she is more about the doctors, and you see her maybe for doctors' signs, and it's the idea why there's a snake and a sword and a V shape for a lot of physicians' signs that you see. So that's what. Those are the different types of liberties that symbols that he's put in. But all of them look very masculine. This is probably the best idea, and I have an image in a drawing form of this. Okay, so here's the entrance. So now let's look on the other side. Okay, Last Judgment. All right. So here, okay, we have Jesus and Mary in the main image. Now on the left, like I said, you can go to the 3D and zoom in and look at all the characters and all the views. But when you look, okay, there's people that on the left side at the bottom, they're fighting to go up. Some are accepting to go up, okay. They're being risen from grave to just regular man on the plane, okay. So man and woman are being risen to heaven, and you can see some of them are fighting it and some of them are not, okay. On this part, down in the next little layer up, you see in the center, angels' trumpets are being blasted and blared, and that is the way that they would alert what the coming of Christ again. Now, as you move up and you go up into the left side, everybody there is pretty happy to be there. They're a little confused, some of them, but majority of the people there are happy, all right? And they know that Jesus died for their sins, and that's why they're being elevated into heaven, okay? On the right side, it's the fall of heaven, okay, for them. And these people are basically trying to destroy heaven as they are being pushed down into hell. And there's all different types. There's murderers, and you can see the guy next to Jesus that's holding like the skin of a victim, which is just very gruesome. But then you just see all these people being pushed down by archangels, and they're being pushed and forced onto the ferry boatmen. Then you get to the next portion as you look at the bottom, okay, and you see the ferrymen there taking people to hell. And this is kind of a little bit loosely based from if you've ever thought about where his name slipped my mind. If you've seen an idea, what he's basically taken is the idea of what heaven and hell looks like. And if you're a fan of Dante, with Dante's Inferno, he talks about the portals of hell and the entryways of hell, and it's basically stemmed from this portion of the Bible and portion of this painting that Dante kind of took references of. Now, as you look at the serpents and the people being taken to hell, there's these men that are very beast-like, and if you look down in the very far corner, the red of the background, you can see Satan at the bottom. Now, why would he do this? Why would he put this piece in? Well, if you're Catholic, at the end of every Mass, you have to go to the altar and receive communion. And what this is basically telling you that, yes, one day Jesus will come, and hopefully you've been good. And if not, at the very foreground, at the bottom that you see, it's showing you if you are not good, you'll go to hell. So he's basically saying, do good, and you won't end up here, and he wants people to see it. That's why it's at the bottom. And you can remember I said people didn't read at this time, and one of the major mortal sins is not going to church every Sunday. So it's basically saying you better come to church every Sunday, okay? And that's what this is about. All right. So here are some sketches, okay? His sketches are lovely. The details and renderings he does is much more detailed than the actual paintings, but he used these and projected these images to the ceiling, okay? So here's the Sibyl, and you can again see that is such a man's back. That is not a feminine back in any way. Okay, next we're at the Pieta. Okay, now the Pieta is a very important piece to Michelangelo's collection of art. All right, there's some things you need to understand about this piece. This is his very first major sculpture. Now, he's done other sculptures when he was younger, but this is the one he's truly being recognized for, and this was going to be given to the Vatican. Okay, now I'm going to say some things in here that are kind of shocking on behalf of the Catholic Church. So some people might not know all the ins and outs of the Catholic Church, but you might understand it after you hear this, okay? Now, okay, first off, all right, how long did it take him to do this? Well, it took him 18 months, okay? Which he was rushed on that job to do that. Okay, some people consider this the world's greatest sculpture to ever be made. These are two life-size forms. Now, I'll say this right now. A lot of people I've heard on Facebook and YouTube videos, and they're like, it's a lot smaller in person. Well, you got to understand the place where it's held at is in the Vatican, which is one of the world's largest churches, and it's the size of a normal human being. If it was in your living room, it would be gigantic in a normal space. But in the Vatican, it just kind of dwarfs it. So if you do see it in person, it is quite smaller than what your mind might imagine. Okay? And there is a link, and I will put it on below. Please look at it and see what you think. Okay? Now, for this piece, okay, it took him 18 months to make. Okay, the average sculptor today, okay, to do one human form would take almost 18 months, and here he did two of them. Okay, so this should have taken him 3 years, and he did it in a year and a half. Okay, first of all, that's amazing. Okay, the second of all, what makes this piece also breathtaking, there is not a flaw on this stone. Okay, this was a perfect stone. All right, what does that mean? Well, you might have seen Cura marble, white marble, in someone's kitchen or someone's bathroom. Okay, it's commonly used nowadays for home remodeling. And if you've seen a white slab of marble, okay, and you see those gray lines that kind of go through the marbling, okay, all right, the more gray it has, the more impure it is. Okay, this piece has no gray lines. It is solid white. So a lot of people believe God himself made this marble for him to do this. And you might be religious or not religious, so I don't want to impose too much godlike issues involving this piece, but it is perfect in every way. Okay. Now, this is a scene where Jesus has been taken off the cross and Mary's holding his dead, lifeless body. Okay, and there's portions, and I'm going to kind of change up the view. Okay, so so you can see more of the shadows. When it's on white, it's kind of hard to see. But here, I just wanted to show you what. Now, if you see it in person, this is pretty darn close to how it's going to look. Okay, it's going to have a very kind of yellowish tone to it. It's highly polished, and this is hand polished. All right, to get stone to this, it takes a lot of effort. Again, on top of that, it would have taken 18 months by itself to polish this. Okay, by hand. They didn't have machines like they have nowadays. Okay, but I want you to see how he thinks about when he does this. Look at Jesus' armpit area, and you see Mary and her fingers are pushing into the fleshy skin that is loose because he is now passed on, and her fingertips are inside of his skin, kind of like pushing that skin, that fat, that moving that, and that is so, the attention to detail on this. And just to give you an idea also the age that he is, he's 22 years old. Okay, most of you are 22. Okay, how many of you would pay that much attention to those little details? Okay, again, it comes from his total upbringing. All right, now if you do go see this piece in person and you get up close to it, and I just said it was a flawless piece, well, it was. A gentleman came in 1976, I believe, snuck in or walked into the Vatican. Underneath his jacket, he had a sledgehammer, and he hopped up on top of the sculpture. And before, you could just walk right up to it, hopped right up to it, and took a sledgehammer and cracked off a portion of Mary's nose, hand. Jesus' chest got cracked, and part of his kneecap, and did it in a matter of seconds, and broke this perfectly pure piece. Now, art historians have fixed it, and it took almost 5 years to fix, but they have fixed it and made it look flawless again, but you might see some cracks and some damaged areas if you get up close to the plexiglass to see it. And just know that that was not the way it intended. It happened later, way later. Okay, and it's a shame. Now, here are some close-ups of the face, and this is what makes this just breathtaking. So right here, looking at the face, you can see Jesus, his angelic look. Okay, and again, he's making death pretty at this point. All right. But when you look at Mary, notice all the folds in the fabric. These are all intentional carves that have to be made out of the stone. All right, it's not like a plaster where you can easily fix it and go back into it. No, this is, every piece has to be cut out and planned before it's made. Okay, Now, another part, I want you to notice, if you look at the chest of Mary in this picture, you might see some lettering on a little strap. Now, this is important to note. The reason that there's a name on this is because the day that this piece was unveiled, okay, Michelangelo worked his tail off to get it done in time. He did it by the time the Pope wanted this for this mass jubilee. He did it. He shows up to the jubilee, and he got no recognition for the making of this piece. And he was furious. So he goes in after it's all been done, tells the guards, I have to finish one thing, and the guards let him. And he put on the chest of Mary, he put down Michelangelo of Florentine across her chest. And he put his name on it. Alright? The Pope considered this at this point to be a holy relic and a perfect piece. And he basically put his name across it, and he said, the Pope said that Michelangelo had desecrated the holy relic. And now, most of the time, people get in trouble for that. Well, what Michelangelo did shortly after doing this, he ran to Lorenzo de Medici. Okay. And Lorenzo de Medici is part of the Medici family at this time, and the Medici family is the richest family in Italy, and they basically control all what happens in Italy. And so here, the Lorenzo promised to protect Michelangelo. They were best friends, and so Michelangelo stayed in his estate while he went to go talk to the Pope, and the Pope wanted Michelangelo executed for doing so. And you got to understand, the Pope is just as powerful as a king or queen at this time. And second of all, this Pope was not a caring Pope that we have today. He was very mobster-like, okay? And so for him to actually come after Michelangelo, it's not unheard of, okay? And what Lorenzo said to the Pope said, basically, you harm a head on Michelangelo, we will move up north. And so the whole family decided that that they would be willing to move up north and give their money to France if he was harmed. And the Pope basically was like, whoa, don't be too hasty. And that's where his punishment of death was taken off, but he did have to be punished. And so Lorenzo agreed. He couldn't just do what he did. And remember, he's 21 or 22 at this time. And so he basically says to him, he goes, well, he has to be punished. And so his punishment was to do the Sistine Chapel. So when I asked, why was the Sistine Chapel made? Well, there's two reasons, right? Well, the first reason is because it was his punishment, okay, to do the Sistine Chapel, all right? And so that's why the Sistine Chapel was made. It's because he put his name on the Pieta, sorry. Now, let's go to the next one. Okay, let's talk about St. Peter's. Now, I'm going to have a link, and there's going to be a little image that pops up, and there's like 9 stations. Click on them. Really do look at the Vatican. It is a beautiful place. It is one of the most wonderful places. Now, it took 300 years to build, okay, and the Vatican that is in the 14th century during Michelangelo and all the Renaissance time is not the same today as it once was, okay? The main architect behind everything on the Vatican that you see today is done by Michelangelo. So that's why he's in this section, okay? So you'll click on the views, look around. Behind the altar, the rose window is amazing with all these gold cherubs coming out. The main altar in the center is just unbelievable with its bronze altar above it. The Pentaca's there. or Pieta is there. I keep calling Pieta. Pieta is there. It's a great 3D view. So take a look and look around. And there's an outside area as well, so you can see what it looks like from the outside. Speaking of that, here it is right there. And so I just wanted to give you guys an idea. Now, this street that goes straight down, this is where all, in the Vatican, this is where all the clergy get all their clothes, and their, and churches do get a lot of their holy relic stuff to bring back home. It's a lot of little shops. During Easter and during popes that are being inducted into being a pope for the public, this little villa here gets solid full throughout guests throughout the United States and the world. If you ever go on an Easter Mass, be prepared that people will be there days in advance sleeping in that area, trying to save a space. Here's what it looks like from the front. And here's the original blueprint. Okay, so you'll see the same kind of thing on the website. Click on the links to see in the areas of this. Take a moment, really do look at it. Now, here, okay, we have the back of the cathedral. Now, if you look over in the far right, and there's that little dome, okay, that right there is Raphael's cathedral. That's how you get there the quickest way from the Vatican. If you look on the left, on the left side, there's a little dome that's on the left, and there's like a little walkway on there, and that leads you to the Sistine Chapel. Now we're going to move up into Paris. Okay, we're going to go into the Louvre, and we're going to talk about the Louvre, and I'll have links again, just like the Vatican, to look at everything. Click on those to see how to get into the Louvre and how it looks. This is the entryway to the Louvre, this gigantic pyramid. So click on the link if you want to see. Here's what it looks like at night, and the entrance of the square. I'll tell you one thing, if you do go to Paris, go with somebody you love. This is a great area to have somebody that you love. Good place to make some good kissy pictures. And a lot of people do a lot of kissing, so don't go after a breakup. That would not be a good thing. So definitely check out that place. Here's what it looks like as you enter. Now, when you get into the Louvre, there's 4 main quadrants. Okay, there's it basically works like a compass, but it's a little funkier than that. When you go over to the left side, where we're going to be going straight up these elevators, you're going to go right upstairs to the sculpture center at the top, and we'll be entering this hallway. Okay, and as you get to the top of the sculpture, here's a piece that's from the Parthenon, which is the world's oldest building in Greece. So it's called the Winged Victory. Okay, this is straight out taken from the Parthenon from Greece and then put into the Louvre, not Michelangelo's. So here's, and you can even see the kind of the way it's set up on the nave and the arches. Now here there's 2 pieces of Michelangelo's in here. It's called the Dying Slaves. Now another series of Dying Slaves are also in London as well, and those slaves are more impressive, but I can never find the pictures online to show you guys. So, but I also think it's kind of neat to go into the Louvre versus London's museum. Now, again, this is a very theatrical dying slave, and there are flaws in the stone here. And so I got different various pictures of these 2 slaves. But the main thing I wanted to talk about is their supports. If you notice on the bottom, there's these kind of rock-like, tree-like forms. These are the supports. It allows the piece to not fall apart. So you can see there. So here's the other slave. Okay, and again, you can see how he pays attention to the detail with that strap that's going underneath the chest there, pulling that chest muscle forward. And there's flaws across the face. Here, you can kind of see it a little bit better in this picture. But notice there's veins and the muscle tones in the arm, and it's hard to believe that's all made out of marble. Here's a close-up of the main dying slave. Now, when you look at this one, you can see how he's paying attention to the detail that is where his thumb is underneath that strap, and how that strap is being pulled off of his chest as he's dying because of exhaustion. Now I have the Venus de Milo accidentally covered over the text, but that's the title of this, Venus de Milo. And now the reason I show you this is another piece from Greece, and again we do not know who makes it, but the reason why I show this is because we believe she's probably holding a very heavy vase, and her arms broke off because of the weight of the vase that was underneath her. And so to have this piece as an example, this is why Michelangelo puts all those struts and those supports so they do not fall apart over time. And there's two different types of wounds on this one, so to speak. If you look at on the shoulder, they have a hole put inside the cavity there, and it's because the stone is breaking out from within. And then when you look at the stone on the left, it's got little tiny holes above the arm, and that's a fracture where the stone will fall apart, and if it does, it will only crack to those pressure points, so it won't run throughout the body. Now, I know it's inside, and the chances of it cracking, but it still is a natural object, and it does slowly break over time, but not as fast if it was outside. Now I'm going to have a little animation for you. Fun little break. I think you guys will love this little video. Click on it and enjoy. You'll have give you a little fun. It's probably one of my favorite videos. I got another one coming up soon. Okay, now we're in the David. Okay, now this is not in the Louvre, and this is not in the Vatican. Okay, David is in Florence. Okay, and if you'd like to see the David, now just be aware, like I said, there's multiple Davids in Florence. Okay, if you want to see the Michelangelo David, make sure you tell them Michelangelo, or they'll drive you to the museum and you walk in, you're like, I'd like to see the David, and they'll tell you where it's at, and you get there and it's not this David. It's a tourist trap, and they just take your money, and they will not give it back, trust me. But here's their specs. Okay, he is about 20 feet tall on pedestal. Without pedestal, he's about 14 feet tall. He is one large piece of stone, okay, marble. He has Romanesque style with the body, with the hairstyle. He is nude. There are no clothes. This is a non-violent piece like the other one I showed you. He does have a weapon. He has a rock and a sling, okay. So write down those things for your final. Now here, okay, is some close-ups. Now this is an unpolished stone. This is actually a very coarse-looking sculpture. If you would have polished it, it is a very impure stone. So when I zoom in on the face, you can see all those little pit marks. Okay, if you would have polished all that, it would have slowly fallen apart. Okay. Notice also here a person is testing the nose, because this is one of the areas of the face that is unsupported, and typically sculptures lose their nose, and again with this size of a rock, it's just as a large piece, so they're constantly giving it tests to make sure that it's not going to fall apart. It is scanned and digitally put into a lot of videos. And here I wanted to show you the strut that holds it and the rock in his hand. But every time I show this to my class, they kind of giggle because it's looking at his butt. But that's not the part I'm really concerned about. I just wanted to show you he only has one support on his right leg, and on the left, okay, his foot, see how he even cut back the stone and even made it very weak at one point. Okay, he's such a skilled carver at this point. He knows how to balance things perfectly, and the weight and the structure will hold over time. Okay, and that's why he's a master at what he does, and that's why this piece is such a sought-after piece. Now, here's a little animation of David. I hope you enjoy. Check it out. Click on the link below. It'll give you a good chuckle. Now, here's some pieces. I just wanted to show you a difference. This is the non-Michelangelo. Now, you can tell it's not Michelangelo's because look at the woman's hip. See that soft curve that I'm talking about? You can see here, see, there's no big indentions going across their hip. And this is actually a piece that was kicked out of the Louvre because it was too romantic. This is supposed to be the Virgin Mary with the Immaculate Conception of God and Jesus, and so this was a blasphemy sculpture. And so, but again, you can tell it's definitely not Michelangelo by that the woman's too feminine looking. But here is probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest pieces he's done, is Moses. Now, this is an outdoor piece. You can tell they're always out when they're outdoor by looking at the grime and the dirt that is put on there by so many people have touched him and kissed his feet. You couldn't pay me enough money in the world to kiss his feet. But it's one of my favorites. I love those arms. I love how he's curling the beard and how that beard is being pulled. I mean, all that has to be planned. So amazing. Now, here is Lorenzo de' Medici's grave. Now, this is underneath the Vatican. There is a tombs of various nature of different types of holy people, typically priests and popes. But Lorenzo de' Medici had given so much to the city and to the Vatican that they gave him his own burial place, and his family too. His body is inside that little coffin shape at the bottom. That was once all white marble. It's yellowed because of the acid from the body leaking into the stone. All right. And again, look at Eve. Very masculine, okay? Versus that other piece I just showed you. You can tell a huge difference between male and female and how he carves. Okay? So, let's get to our last person, Donatello. Now, I'm only focusing on one main piece, and I'm going to talk about one just as a theory to think about. So you're going to see two pieces total, quick and easy. Okay? Like I said, he died in 1466. Michelangelo was born in 1475, so he had no clue who Michelangelo was or was going to become. And it would have been kind of great if they actually got to work together at one point. That would have been quite amazing time. But now he's the first one to do the first David. Now, again, this is a very feminine pose, very much like the Leonardo da Vinci's version. Again, it's the same size. It's made out of bronze. It's 24 inches tall. Okay, it does have a Roman style helmet at the bottom for Goliath, but it is a Greek influence piece with the hat, the long hair, okay, and even the boots that he's wearing, okay. It is a violent piece because you can see Goliath's head. It's probably the most violent of the bunch. It also has a sword that possibly was like Goliath's, and he also has a rock in his hand, just like the David of Michelangelo's. Again, like I said, it was not uncommon before the 14th century to have men with long hair. So a lot of people get very confused with the long hair in this pose. Here's the rock in his hand. I know I kind of stretched that image, sorry. It's kind of silly. But here on the boots, you can see, again, it doesn't have, again, it's very Greek influence because it's very organic looking. You see these flowering patterns, they're not Romanesque. Romanesque are more symbols and shapes. And then here's Goliath, and you can look and you can see down the neck cavity of the neck, and you can see a vertebrae piece, and also you can see how his foot is kind of overshadowing his beard. And again, the sandals that he's wearing, those are very Romanesque, but the style of all the patterns is very Greek influenced. But the helmet is very Romanesque, and so when you look at the Roman helmet, this is what I'm talking about. So you look at you have Goliath whipping these slaves as he's pulling his chariot, and so this right here is what I'm talking about. That is a Romanesque influence. Even the helmet itself is Romanesque. All right. Now here comes our last piece for the class. Yay! Okay. Now, this is supposed to be Mary Magdalene out of wood. Now, the question I ask you, what do you think when you see this person? Well, most of you would probably walk away. Am I correct? If this person was walking down the street? Well, he put Mary Magdalene in a form, but he also gave her the sense of like what a leper would look like. And so that big phrase, people wore bands, little bracelets around their wrists saying, "What would Jesus do?" Well, that's what this is about, okay? Jesus would have saw this woman in need and in pain and would have gone over to, and you're wearing those bracelets, what would Jesus do? Well, he's asking you, would you go help that person? And most of us would be like, no, because they're scary and they look like something from a horror film. But the truth is, you're supposed to help them. And that's what this piece, like I talk about Donatello, it's all about the mentalness, the idea behind it. And so here, I feel he's just kind of, quote unquote, he's kind of missing the message with this, because it is a very kind of, in my opinion, very scary kind of a piece. But he's trying to allure you as the viewer to kind of think what Jesus would do in it. So anyway, all right. So we're now at the end. Please take your final after this video is over. Don't forget to turn in your paper on your artist review. There are some steps. Just follow the steps, just like you've been taking your quizzes. Fill out your review and send it in. Other than that, there is also a review of me. Give me a review. Like I said, there is no grade that is needed for it, but if you do fill it out, I will replace your lowest grade that you've taken the quiz. If you've not taken the quiz, you will not get an A for a 0 for missing a quiz. You must take your quizzes. But I will give you a grade raise if you messed up on a quiz. It will not go for your midterms or finals. Just to let you know. Only quizzes. Now, but make sure you get those. And if don't be afraid if you put down something negative about it. I'm not expecting, if there's something you saw that was wrong, please feel free to tell me. It's important that I make this class the best as I can. And with your help, you could do that by telling me what I might need to change or fix. So, on that note, I thank you for taking my course. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned some things. And if you ever have any questions about art, you have my personal information. Feel free to find me on the campus at Cedar Valley College. And I hope that you want to take another course with me. online or not online. I teach printmaking Monday, Wednesday nights. Depending on when this video comes out, it might be in the daytime, who knows. But the most important thing is that I would like most of you guys to participate in art. Try to go to art museums more than once a year. Try to go to the museum as often as you can. If you live in Dallas or Fort Worth area, all the art museums are free, and there's air conditioning during the hotness of summers. There's some great things that happen at nights at museums. First Fridays of the months are always gallery openings, and if you're over 21, free wine and beer. Just be careful when you drink. Don't drive. All right, call Uber. There's a lot of great things in the city. So on that note, I hope you enjoyed this course, and I hope you take advantage of more art opportunities throughout the DFW area, or wherever else you are in your hometown. Try to support your local arts. Try to go, and the biggest thing is go to people's art openings. Even if you don't have any money to buy art, just your presence there can make a difference to artists, just knowing that people like their work. If you like also my personality and you want to come to one of my art shows, you can Facebook friend me. Just type in my phone number or my full name, John Alexander Taylor, and I should pop right up. I take a lot of students as friends in there. And so if I have a show, feel free to come to it. And if we never met, be a perfect time to meet you. All right. Thank you again. And make sure you fill out all the rest of the stuff. All right. Have a good day. Bye.